Everyone, thanks so much for getting up early to join us for our panel. My name is Austin Hay, and I am the VP of Consulting for the Growth Practice, which is a small boutique integrated services consulting subsidiary of mParticle. And today I'm here with Drew Frost, one of our customers, and Ramsey from Overstock to talk a little bit about customer marketing data. Before I do that, let me tell you a little bit about the Growth Practice and some of the work we do so we can underpin some of the conversation we'll have. The Growth Practice is a small team of technical consultants who help integrate very siloed marketing data sets from across the stack. We work with Fortune 500 companies like JP Morgan Chase, Walmart, Sam's Club, to help their marketing teams not only communicate how they can build business cases for the types of data they need, but then we actually help integrate that technology with those teams. Drew has been a longtime friend and a customer, and so I'm sure he'll share a little bit about that. But to dive right in, let me toss it over to Drew. I would love for you to introduce yourself, talk about the team that you run and how you think about marketing data, and then Ramsey will move to you.
Sure. So as Austin's saying, I'm Drew Frost. I run our growth marketing team at Sam's Club. And essentially my team has three tenets. First tenet is data science and decision sciences, where we actually take a look more in depth and do some planning. The second tenet is anything that has to do with growth or new ventures for our marketing organization. And the third tenet is technology. So that's where Austin comes into play.
Yeah, and I lead the marketing product team at Overstock, and we have a lot of different groups within that, both push, paid, personalization, asset curation. A big part of what we're focusing on is personalizing our experiences to our customers, right? Delivering just what she wants in every experience. And that requires a lot of data. It requires a lot of insights into our customers. And that, is pervasive within our marketing group.
Yeah, and Ramsey, why don't we start with you? How do you think about marketing data at a very high level? And maybe you can actually give us a little bit of an understanding of not only how you used to think about marketing data, but what were some of the characteristics of data silos, and how did you move towards a strategy of centralizing data, and why was that important?
Yeah, so when we think about marketing data, it's any interaction that our customer has with our site, any interaction they have with any of our marketing engagements, really trying to understand, in the moment, who's that customer going to be, in 6 months, in 6 years. And so being able to stitch all that together requires a lot of data. As far as the silos go, there's, Overstock's been around for a while, so we have data kind of in a bunch of different places. So we have, a couple different data warehouses. We have the data that we get from the channels. We have the data that comes in from our site. So being able to stitch all that together and kind of moving to a real-time data streaming architecture has forced us into a spot where we need to have a central data store for customer data.
Mm-hmm. Drew?
Yeah, so very similar vein to Ramsey. So we've been around technically since 1983. What that's created, so we've got quite a few legacy systems. We've got quite a few deskboard systems. And really what we've been working on for the past couple of years is putting those into one location so we can actually do something with it. So I think, coming at it from the marketing angle, so to speak, is we're really looking for what I'd consider more directional indicators, mm-hmm. right? So part of that is making sure that, yes, we have as much absolute data in the systems as possible, but we have enough that my team can actually go in, either create the audience, run the query, be self-sustaining enough to do their own reporting, right? And all of that is basically put together into one layer.
Yeah, so unpacking that a little bit, it sounds like, building from one of the previous conversations where we actually talked a lot about user acquisition specifically and the campaign and channel level, your data, you're getting like your media spend, that's all connected usually to some type of attribution partner or to the media partners themselves like Google and Apple. And maybe Ramsey and Drew, you can color it. How do you think about a source like branch or AppsFlyer attribution data with these other data silos? And maybe you can talk about, for example, what options were available when trying to tie these different systems together.
Yeah, I can start with that. So, there's a preponderance of data. All of that data is valid in the sense that it's ones and zeros, right? So being able to true up data that you see in one system, data that you see in another system, is...
Can you give some examples too for the audience of different?
Yeah. So you mentioned Branch and Facebook, for example. So with Branch, we can know that somebody clicked on something in Facebook, landed on our site, what they did from there. And then with Facebook, we get kind of aggregate data. This is all of the impressions that you have. Here's all of the clicks that you have. Truing that up is it's challenging. I think the other piece of it is we don't usually, from a lot of those groups, you don't necessarily get like one-to-one data, right? So if we're trying to drive towards one-to-one personalization, knowing that 50,000 people clicked on an ad is cool, but it doesn't necessarily help us understand, okay, this person, right? This person did this thing. So really the idea behind having a central like customer view is that it allows us to collect all this data from all these different sources, all these user attributes. And then one of the nice things about a CDP is you actually decorate those events as it goes through the CDP. So you might have a very lean amount of data coming from one source, but then as it passes through the CDP, it actually picks up all these attributes, all these other pieces of data that makes it that much more valuable coming out the other side.
Got it.
Yeah, for sure. So I think on the SAM side and the marketing side, right? For us, this really starts with obviously the marketing use case, and then we kind of take it from there. So, and to break this down, like if we were to look at how we structured getting all this data, say 5 years ago, you're talking that we'd run a query using a precious resource, which is our own people, and then it would have to be translated. So it'd have to be translated to Facebook. It would have to be translated to Google. It would have to be translated to whatever source you can possibly name, right? It's really that exchange transfer layer that there's like a humongous amount of power. The famous, saying that, this is a previous conversation too, that I've had several times with several folks, is that all marketers want all information, all the time, always, right now. The reality of it is we can't have that. But as we get closer to real time, as we get closer to understanding more strong use cases, we're going to make inroads to that. And that's, I think, what's really exciting, for this year, next year, and really the next couple.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about use cases. So I like to tell people that I work with that use cases and marketing data give you leverage. Leverage is what helps you activate your customers. And I would be curious, maybe to start with you, Drew. Talk a little bit about how a centralized data layer can build different marketing use cases, how that gives you leverage to activate your customers, and how that creates a flywheel effect for you to build use cases, prove them right or wrong, drive those results back to the business, and then keep building on that. And then Ramsey, maybe we can move to you afterwards.
Yeah, for sure, right? So you just want to start like just basic layer, right? Which is just aggregate of data and being able to track and understand when somebody does something, especially in like my world, in the commerce world, just purchasing, right? So like that was like our core questions. Like, okay, how do we know, can we just get to the point of like knowing when somebody made a purchase inside of the app? And of course, there's some level of like just basic attribution, surely. But then as all marketers do, we started to layer on those things. So where do I get the attributes to that actual event? So I want to know more things about them. I want to know, in like the Sam's Club world, I want to know what their membership number was. I'd like to overlay data enrichment and start getting a better view of ID resolution, right? As opposed to just simply saying like, oh, hey, yeah, I've got this list, and turns out that moms need diapers. Cool. That's only going to take you so far in the marketing world, right? But now if you can connect into the pieces more advanced, that, hey, Sally has purchased diapers 4 times in the past, 9 months, and that she's a prime candidate to actually move up a size, right? That's a humongous business, both physical, retail, and e-commerce.
And how do you typically like leverage that type of insight from both like a tooling and instrumentation perspective?
So that's really where things get a little complicated in our world, which is completely fine, right? So it all starts in the SAM's universe with the data science team, right? So, and I think the miraculous of more of a CDP or a centralized layer, right, is that team now has a single source of truth or a single, throat to choke, right? That they're actively going in, they're running and pulling queries against, right? And that's the level. Now, the trick is where you get more advanced is like, how do you integrate either an index or a predictive model, right? And, definitely something that I think a lot of folks are trying against. And again, it's more along the lines of how much data can we put into the system, and then how do we get that data back out of the system?
Mm-hmm. Ramsey, I know we had a little bit of a long conversation there, so maybe back to remind you, I think the audience would be really curious to know, how does a centralized data layer feed use cases, and how does that create like a flywheel effect for you to prove out different types of hypotheses?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite use cases is omni-channel, right? Omni-channel. This idea that you can talk to people across all of your channels effectively, and that you're not cannibalizing from one channel to work on another channel, and that you can have an audience that is consistent across all of them. I think that what you start unpacking with having like a centralized layer is, oh no, we can actually do that. Not only can we do that, we can get incredibly granular to say somebody who does something in one channel, we should change the way that we react to them in a different channel, in as close to real time as possible. And a lot of it depends on the channels themselves. Like with email, like we've got full control in the sense that, outside of being able to run JavaScript, we can make that email look like whatever we want when we send it. On the site, we have even more control because we can actually run JavaScript. And then with channels like, Google and Facebook, we can be more granular in the audiences that we set up and the way that we handle spend and the creative that we use to try and really drive that consistent user experience.
So how do you think about this centralized layer and your marketing data with respect to product and engineering teams? Because I hear this all the time. I talk with marketers who are like, we're really interested in having more access to data, more leverage, more use cases, but we have this product team that lives, on another planet, and we have an engineering team that probably won't talk to us unless we escalate to our VP.
Well, I'm the guy on the other planet, so I'm on the product side. So I think the nice thing, one of the really nice things that we have is that our marketing team, our product team, our engineering team are all kind of integrated, right? So the business team will say, hey, we want to do this thing. The product team says, great. Like, we want that. We want to build things that our business team wants to use. Building products that nobody uses is just pointless. And then we work with the engineering teams and try to understand, okay, what's the minutia of this? How hard is it going to be to actually do this thing? Rather than just being like, we can get it done in 6 months. So it's, we work on building really accurate estimates and then going back and talking to the business team to make sure that we're actually building something that they want. I think the advantage of something like a centralized, kind of customer view is it's changed the way that we talk a lot about the things that we build, right? So we've gone from essentially saying, well, we just need a really good, SQL query that we can run on a daily basis to pull this data out of a database. Instead, it's like, no, we should build data streams that have certain types of data and are able to stream that out to other systems. So that we can then use data that we would be using in email in places like Facebook. We can use data that typically would pertain to understanding on-site personalization and use that in email. And by centralizing that customer view and centralizing that kind of data architecture around that, it's enabled us to actually pursue some of those things.
Drew?
Yeah, so I think you guys heard this earlier. At least I thought I heard so backstage, right? Is that there's some level of healthy tension between the marketing, the product, and the engineering folks. And what I mean by that is completely fine. And not only is it fine, it should be, right? Because truthfully, like if from a marketing perspective, like if I had it my way, right, the engineering team would do nothing else except give me whatever it is that I need them to do. That's not even close to practical, which it is what it is, right? But I think like the key thing to hit on here is like it's in that partnership, and it's the give and take. So like a simple rule of thumb that I've chosen to live by, right, is that if I come up with a use case and I want to take it to my product folks, or if I want to have a conversation with engineering, right, it's not good enough for me just to think of one use case. I've got to figure out at least 5 ways I'm going to use that, right? And that actually helps the conversation along with the product and the engineering folks. And like that's something that I would strongly recommend like all marketers do, as opposed to just bringing, hey, I've got this one thing, it's really huge, it's going to make us millions of dollars or give us hundreds of thousands of users. Oh, okay, that's cool, right? But is this a seasonal thing? Are you going to be done with it in 2 weeks? Like, Like, am I going to get like an attaboy for a 2-week campaign? Because, I mean, that's cool. But in the long-term strategy, is like that the right thing to do? And that's the question that I think more marketers are asking themselves day in and day out, and they should be.
Yeah. So we have enough time for one more question. And actually, the one that is top of mind for me from our breakfast today, Ramsey, was there are these big buzzwords in marketing: personalization, orchestration, machine learning. And you could throw a rock in the room and people would talk about it for an hour, but not actually know what the technology is underneath and how to pin that to real marketing tools. So Ramsey, I'd love to know how you're thinking about it at Overstock. What are some of the technologies, tools, and workflows that you use to actually make those buzzwords reality? And Drew, I know from our conversation this morning, Sam's Club has kind of a different approach to those types of terms and how you make that a reality. So I'd love to hear from both of you on this final question.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, by the way, I love machine learning. I refer to it as magic learning. A lot of people like the idea of like, we can just snap our fingers and know everything. It's like, nah, it takes a little longer than that. You have to train models and such. But we have an amazing algorithm team at Overstock, which our marketing team works very closely with. And one of the things that enables us to do is to come up with problems, right? And machine learning is really built to solve problems. One of those problems that it solves is personalization. So by having a centralized place for all of our customer data, one of the things we're doing right now is really filling in the data that we know about the customer, right? If we have all these different streams of data, knowing all of that is good. Being able to actually stitch that into something useful is better. So making that data usable. And then really kind of the next frontier of that is filling in what we don't know, right? Using machine learning to kind of fill in the gaps so we can say, okay, this person who did this and these other people who did this is the commonality between them. And again, by having a real-time streaming data architecture and by centralizing that customer view, it enables us to give our machine learning teams a actual really good chance of being able to build what we're asking for. Not everything that we ask for, but definitely a lot of what we're asking for.
I just like the name Magic Learning. So I think like, one way that I think that retail, for example, is looking at this problem a little differently, especially if you're a player in any type of physical space at all. At least how we look at it differently is we're creating centers of innovation. So from a Sam's perspective, we opened a location in Dallas, Texas last fall. It's called Sam's Club now. And probably the coolest thing, there's several cool things about the store, but the coolest thing about the actual club or store, for those that are not Sam's Club employees, is that it's a completely mobile experience. Like, you have to do everything with your app inside of the building, right? And it's created like this seamless customer interaction. But all that is to say, right, is like, we've taken the same components that Ramsey was just talking about, as opposed to putting them in, a cloud or a back-end system that folks can't see, and we've actually interjected them into like a physical retail space. And like, that's the coolness and like the power of technology, right? Is like, as it continues to evolve and to grow, its applications go, far and beyond like what you can do with a .com or actually just with an app itself, right? And like, if I'm looking at like the next 2 years, truthfully, I feel like that's probably going to be more and more. It's like, how do you apply all these cool things that we're working in and day out and actually make your customer or whoever's life easier, right? In our case, that's, definitely a physical retail space. In somebody else's case, that may be at a home stay, it may be on an airplane. I mean, who knows? Like, the possibilities are endless.
Great. Well, we're out of time, so thank you guys so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Cool.